Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. This is going to be the final part of showing you a preview of all of the Berlin Trio, i.e. 3 reskins of some of your favorite tanks in the game. This is the IS-2. It's going to be a Tier 7 Soviet premium heavy tank, and it took part on the assault on Berlin in 1945 and is infamous due to these white kind of polar bear markings. We can even see a polar bear here right next to the Soviet star. It truly is a great looking tank, and if you are a fan of Soviet heavy tanks, then look no further. This might be a great pickup for you. Now this tank can be quite confusing because currently there's already a Tier 7 Soviet heavy tank in the game, and it's called the IS. And it looks pretty much the same, but there are some differences. Look at the angling on the front of the hull. We can see that the IS-2 has a big front wedge, which will help that upper plate, which is a weak point on the IS right here. But this is nothing new because there is already a Tier 7 Chinese heavy tank in the game, the IS-2. Luckily for you, these vehicles are going to perform very similarly on the battlefield, so you don't need to worry if it's a Soviet IS-2 or if it's a Chinese IS-2. There will be some differences that I'm going to go into in some more detail. If somehow you have no idea of what these Tier 7 Soviet heavy tanks are like, well, they're absolutely monstrous. They're quite fast. Their armor is pretty darn good, it's well-rounded, but their highlight is this wild and unreliable 122mm. It hits like a truck with 390 alpha damage, but its rate of fire is also just under 5 rounds a minute. That is very nice indeed. The penetration on the gun is okay, it's 175, but the real downside here is that it's 0.46 accuracy and 3.4 second aim time, which means the best way to use these tanks is usually up close and personal. Now let's just take a quick look how the IS-2, the Soviet variant, compares to the Chinese IS-2. Firepower-wise, the tanks are nearly identical. There is a difference on the elevation between the two tanks, however. The Soviet IS-2 has 5 degrees better elevation than the Chinese IS-2, and it also gets 1 degree better gun depression. That's a great plus. The tank also has a better engine power of 600 compared to the 580 of the Chinese IS-2, but its speed limit forwards is limited. It can only go at 34 kilometers an hour forwards, whereas the Chinese IS-2 could go at 37 kilometers. So these two tanks are pretty much doing exactly the same thing, just slightly differently. I'd say that the new IS-2, the Soviet one, has a bit more flexibility and grunt in its engine, but its top speed is just that little bit more limited than the Chinese variant. But I think it's very much more likely that you guys are interested how the new Soviet IS-2 compares to the Soviet IS. So let's do a very quick rundown of this. The new IS-2 has 50 more hit points. It has the same speed limit. It's pretty much identical with regards to its weight, the same crew loadout. Ignore the hull armor here. It is 120 on the lower plate. And I'm going to explain the difference in the upper plates in just a second. Engine power-wise, the IS is much better than the IS-2, which gives it more grunt in its engine. But the traverse speed is slightly better on the IS-2 compared to the IS. And its terrain resistance values are also better, but it has a slightly higher chance to be set on fire, and its gun performances are identical. So the real key differences here are obviously that the IS could be faster in a straight line to accelerate, but when it comes to having to turn the tank, the IS-2 might have the advantage. Let's take a look at the differences between the armor profiles of these vehicles. So here is the Soviet Tier 7 Heavy, the IS. Let's zoom it out to about this point and take a look to see how its armor profile will perform. So 120 on the lower plate, that's very standard. Let's take a look at what the upper plate is here. It ranges between 100 to 128 in some areas. And that's because this area on this tank is very flat indeed. We can see there's a two-tiered approach of a flat lower plate, and then a great angle here, and then a flat upper plate here, which looks to be a driver's hatch. Let's take a look to see how this looks on the IS-2. We can clearly see on the IS-2 here it is well angled. So what this means is that the IS-2 has the great lower plate of the 120mm, but it doesn't have the same upper plate weak point that the IS has up here. We can see it ranges up to 230, 160, and you have to hit right on the driver's slit here to have 100mm effective. but good luck trying to hit that tiny little area. If you miss, you're going to be hitting 230 effective. So that's certainly a key advantage for the IS-2 there. Going to have better upper plate armor. But if you need to take one of these out on the battlefield, be careful if you get their side, because as we can see here, their tracks give them a very huge effective armor here. You want to shoot above the tracks at this area of armor here. You can see it ranges from at the front about 170 down to 100 here. This is the place that you want to shoot, right in the middle along this bar. And so that's my tip for taking out Tier 7 Soviet heavy tanks effectively. And if you are playing the Tier 7 Soviet heavy tank, you want to keep going backwards and forwards to try and avoid them from shooting this area of your tank, and try and hope that they bounce off your nice upper plate or get shots absorbed in the tracks. And so not really anything too new here. This is basically a rehash of a Chinese Tier 7 heavy tank, which was already very similar to a Soviet Tier 7 heavy tank that's being put into the game with, albeit a great looking camo job, to probably just give you guys a chance to have a premium tank if you love the Soviet heavy style gameplay. So let's just take a quick look how it performs on the battlefield. So here we go, we are playing in the IS-2 on Sand River. This is a very nice matchup for this tank. We are one of only 4 Tier 7s on my team or the enemy team. That means that my armor is going to be exceptional, and my gun, if it hits, is going to be devastating. And I say if it hits because the aim time is horrendous, the accuracy is horrendous as well. But that's not always the case. Soviet guns are infamous for being guided by the hand of Stalin himself. Let's see how this one is going to go on. So we can see basically the limited top speed limit of the IS-2 here. You've got to be careful sometimes where you're pushing in. It is limited to that 34 kilometers an hour that we were talking about. That means that it does take you a while to get to positions. And I've been caught out here. I tried to make an aggressive play, and I've already lost my engine. So there we go. My repair kit is used, but thankfully we managed to get over the slope, and we try and rush into position where hopefully we can help out this Tier 6 French light tank, the AMX-12T, who has got himself in a lot of trouble. Type T-34. Yes, please. 215 damage. We could have easily done double that to that guy. Talking about AMX-12Ts. Yep, just stay right there. That's fine. 304 damage, and we evade a shot from the IS on the enemy team. For some reason, he drives straight out in front of us, so we angle our armor and prepare to hit him hard again. We slam in a shot, reverse our way down the slope, trying to make ourselves difficult to hit, and he does not find a weak point. He bounces. Gonna hit that mid plate. Straight in, 317 damage done. We ripped apart that IS tank on the enemy team. Now this T-34, I don't know what he's doing, but he is dead now. Unfortunately, our shell was a little slow towards the enemy there, and we don't manage to pick up the kill. But so far, a great start to the game. 3 kills and 1,200 damage done in 2 minutes. This low-tier combat is ferocious as we slam in a shell into the Type 58 on the enemy team. And our allies support the gigantic shell that just whittled away half of his hit points and finish him off. We're getting nailed here by a T-67. He is hitting us again and again, and he is so sneaky. There's no chance that we're going to be able to spot the T-67 in this tank. Our view range is abysmal. Soviet heavy tanks are blind as bats. And unless you use binoculars or coated optics, you're going to have a very hard chance to be able to see your opponents at any kind of decent range, especially sneaky, sneaky tank destroyers, such as the T-67. Now we see a VK-2801, a Tier 6 German light tank, charge his way through. It doesn't matter, 373 alpha damage. That is what's so special about these 122mm Soviet guns. Even at Tier 7, when you get into a matchup like this, it's simply devastating. And you're going to be doing half health against your opponents if they're a Tier 6 and below. And sometimes if they're Tier 5s, you're almost guaranteed a one-shot. For example, if we hit that T-67, it's a guaranteed one-shot. Well, I say guaranteed. That's not correct. But we're going to be killing him with one shot probably about 70% of the time. We spot the Cheeto in the distance. We managed to zero in our shot. 372. Come on, where are the high rolls? Where are the high rolls, I say? There's a KV-85. Whoa! How did that one go in? I think he must have turned into it. 414 damage there against the KV-85. Hold on, didn't I just say a few minutes ago that this tank is inaccurate and has long aim time? I think Stalin has truly blessed us today as we pick up our 6th kill on a sneaky Tier 5 French light tank there. Now an IS-2 on the enemy team. That is a Chinese IS-2, comes right forwards. We set him on fire and he nearly burns to death, but his fire extinguisher saves him. 3,500 damage done in not even 5 minutes. 6 kills confirmed. What a round so far for this polar bear of a tank. Now where is that sneaky T-67? I remember him shooting me from the mid-ridge. I'm thinking maybe he's pulled back and fallen down this area. Where is he? Come on, Amerikansky, where are you? There he is. You've been shooting me all game. I think I'm going to shoot a little harder as we finish off the Tier 5 American tank destroyer. So what a result here for the Tier 7 Premium Soviet heavy tank, the IS-2. Damn, it looks good. And if your shots go your way, it is simply devastating. This was a huge round for the polar bear. This tank certainly suits a reckless playstyle. If you want to have big games in this Soviet behemoth, you want to get stuck right in and just hope that things go your way. I personally think that this tank has got to be one of the best starting vehicles in the game at Tier 7, and when you get there, you really feel that you can go toe-to-toe with anything, as long as it's of equal and lower tier. Let's be honest, if I'd got into a Tier 9 game, I would have probably been brushed aside, had trouble penetrating my opponents, because their armor actually can work against the 175mm of penetration, and let's just say we wouldn't be ending up this game with 7 kills and 3,800 damage nearly in a 5-minute round. If I'd played this aggressively by myself in a Tier 9 game, all that I would have is a very dead polar bear on my tank and probably 5 gigantic holes in it. Nevertheless, there is nothing quite as satisfying as getting one of your Soviet heavy tanks into a very nice matchup and just simply mopping up your opponents. And that's why maybe you'll want to make this one of your purchases. So let's just take a very quick look at the post-game stats. So a huge round here for the IS-2. We made nearly 100,000 credits in 5 minutes, 2,092 experience. We got the Top Gun and the High Caliber Medal for our 3,784 damage. That's 1,395 base. We fired 13 shots this game, of which 11 hit, and because 175mm of penetration at this kind of top tier value is very good, all of those shots penetrated. And our armor and our hit points kept us alive long enough to do so. One of the reasons why you'll probably be wanting to play this tank is to make credits. And as we can see, we received a gross amount of 98,500 here in a rather short game time. Now, if we take away the fact that I use some premium consumables, this would pretty much be about 75,000 credits profit, even with firing the occasional premium round, making this vehicle a very good way to make money. Just be careful that you don't bounce too many 122mm shells, as they do cost you 1,000 credits a pop. And as I mentioned, in higher tier matchups, where your opponents start to get much better armor, unless you hit the side and the rear, then you're going to really struggle to penetrate your opponents reliably, and you could end up hemorrhaging credits. Nevertheless, if you want to make some experience, this does get a bonus for being a premium vehicle. It looks like in this vehicle, it is a 20% bonus to all of the experience that you get, which will really help your crew training, meaning that this 2,092 experience game goes up to 2,510 experience. So if for some reason you don't already have a KV-5 or an IS-6, then maybe pick one of these up and you can accelerate your crew training on your Soviet heavy tanks. So again, guys, nothing really revolutionary here. It is an IS-2 and it behaves pretty much the same as the Chinese IS-2 and also the Soviet IS. However, it definitely is the most pretty of the vehicles, and if you do like your Soviet heavy tanks, then maybe this will be one for you, and you can ride that polar bear into battle, hopefully take out your opponents. Personally, for me, I probably won't be picking one of these up. I don't really find that IS gameplay very fun. I'd probably rather be in a T-29. And of course, this 122mm is oh so fun when things go your way like you saw in this gameplay. But trust me, when the shoe is on the other foot and Stalin is kicking your ass and making sure that your shells don't reach the target, that is indeed very frustrating to have this 3.4 second aim time and 0.46 accuracy. And so there you have it, the Berlin Trio. I managed to get all of this gameplay in 15 battles. Had an absolute blast, as we can see here. Picking up multiple ace tankers and really high experience games in all of these Berlin Trio tanks. And that's because really they truly are very strong indeed. And they're also very popular tanks, and probably one makes the other. Very strong, very popular. That's how it goes. So I think that Wargaming stepping in and making premium variants of our kind of favorite tanks so we can make a lot of credits and so that we can accelerate our crew training is a pretty cool thing. And if you don't like it, then simply don't buy them. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider giving it a like down below. It will really help the channel out. And if you want to see another preview of one of the tanks from this Berlin Trio, then simply click up here and you can go through to see the Cromwell Berlin, which is looking like it could be one of the strongest tanks tier for tier in the game if it stays at it as it is. And let me know in the comments what you think about this Polar Bear IS-2. Do you think that is boring, been there, done that, I don't want to play an IS or an IS-2? Or maybe you're a Soviet heavy tanker and you want to get stuck in there right away and make a hell of a lot of credits. Either way, let me know what you guys think. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.